The story begins in a small village. The village is nestled in a valley, surrounded by towering peaks and deep forests. Life in the village is simple and peaceful, with most people working as farmers or herders. The villagers are hardworking and resilient, but they also have a deep reverence for the natural world and the spirits that dwell within it. One of the villagers is a young woman named Amara. Amara is a gifted healer and herbalist, with a deep knowledge of the plants and animals that live in the forest. She's also a skilled hunter and tracker, having learned these skills from her father, who was a legendary hunter in the region. As a child, Amara had a vision in which she saw a great danger coming to the village. In the vision, she saw a dark cloud of smoke and fire, spreading across the land and consuming everything in its path. She also saw a group of strangers, dressed in strange clothing and armed with powerful weapons, marching towards the village. Despite her fear, Amara knew that she had a duty to protect her people. She began to train herself in the art of war, learning how to use a bow and arrow, a spear, and other weapons. She also learned how to move silently and hide in the forest, becoming a skilled guerrilla fighter. Years passed, and Amara's skills were put to the test when a band of invaders attacked the village. The invaders were a group of mercenaries, hired by a neighboring warlord to conquer the region. They had advanced weapons and armor, and they were well trained in the art of warfare. At first, the villagers were no match for the invaders. They were quickly overwhelmed, and many were killed or taken captive. But Amara refused to give up. She rallied a small group of villagers and led them into the forest, where they began to launch surprise attacks on the invaders. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, Amara and her group managed to inflict heavy losses on the invaders. They used the terrain to their advantage, using the forest and the mountains to launch surprise attacks and then disappear without a trace. Over time, the invaders grew frustrated and began to make mistakes. They let their guard down and became careless, and Amara and her group took advantage of every opportunity. They sabotaged supply lines, destroyed weapons, and killed key leaders of the invaders. Finally, after months of fighting, the invaders were forced to retreat. They left behind a devastated village, with many dead and injured. But they had been defeated, and the villagers rejoiced. Amara was hailed as a hero, and her skills as a warrior and a healer were praised by all. But the victory had come at a great cost. Many of her friends and family had been killed in the fighting, and the village was in ruins. In the aftermath of the war, Amara struggled to come to terms with what had happened. She had saved her people, but at what cost? She had killed and maimed others, and she had seen the worst of humanity. She began to withdraw from the village, spending more time in the forest and less time with her friends and family. Years passed, and the village began to rebuild. Amara remained a figure of respect and admiration, but she was also a figure of mystery and solitude. She never married or had children, preferring to devote herself to the forest and the spirits that dwelled within it. In the end, Amara passed away peacefully, surrounded by her friends and family. The village mourned her passing, but they also celebrated her life and her legacy. They knew that she had saved them from a great danger, and that her sacrifice and her bravery would never be forgotten. Amara's passing, however, marked a new era for the village. With her gone, there was no one to protect the village from new dangers, whether from within or without. And so, it was only a matter of time before another threat emerged. This time, it was a deadly virus that swept through the village, killing many and leaving the survivors in a state of despair. The villagers did what they could to help each other, but the virus was too powerful, and soon the entire village was infected. The villagers called for outside help, but it was too late. The virus had already spread beyond the village, and soon it had reached the surrounding towns and cities. Within weeks, it had become a pandemic, with people all over the region falling ill and dying. Amara's legacy lived on, however, even in the face of this new crisis. The villagers remembered her teachings, and they did what they could to help each other, even in the face of death. They turned to traditional medicine and herbal remedies, hoping to find a cure for the virus. In the end, they did manage to find a cure, but it was too late for many. The virus had taken too many lives, and the village was left a shadow of its former self. The survivors mourned their dead, and they struggled to rebuild their lives in the wake of such tragedy. Amara's story was retold again and again, not only in the village but in the surrounding towns and cities. Her bravery and sacrifice became a symbol of hope and resilience, a reminder that even in the face of great danger, there is always hope. But for the villagers, the memory of Amara was bittersweet. She had saved them from one threat, but in the end, they had been unable to save themselves from the next. The village was left to mourn its dead, and to wonder what the future would hold. And so, the story of Amara and the village of the Himalayas came to a sad and poignant end. A story of bravery, sacrifice, and hope, but also of tragedy and loss. A story that would be told for generations to come, a reminder of the fragility of life, and the power of the human spirit to overcome even the greatest of challenges.